Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had an immortal quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sound of a snapping branch is usually innocuous. In a forest, it is the sound of a deer stepping lightly, a squirrel shedding a casing, or the wind shifting the canopy. But to Katsuki Bakugo, for the rest of his life, the sound of a snapping branch would sound like the end of the world. It was a Tuesday in mid-July. The humidity in Muzidafu was oppressive, a wet blanket of heat that made the cicadas scream in the trees and the asphalt shimmer with mirages. For 4-year-olds, however, the heat was irrelevant. The heat was just another dragon to be slain, another villain to be ignored. "Hurry up, Deku!" Katsuki shouted, his voice rough even then, marching across the fallen log that bridged the gap between the two steep banks of the creek. Below them, the river was low but treacherous. It wasn't deep water, maybe ankle-high at best, but it was a bed of jagged stones, old concrete runoff, and slippery moss. It was a graveyard for discarded bicycle parts and glass bottles. Izuku Midoriya scrambled to keep up, his red sneakers skidding on the dirt. He was smiling. He was always smiling when he was following Kaken. "Wait up! I'm coming! Heroes don't wait!" Katsuki barked back, small explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers to punctuate his authority. He hopped off the log on the other side, striking a pose. "I'm already at the villain's lair." Izuku hurried onto the log. It was an old thing, rot eating away at the bark, slick with the morning's dew that the canopy had protected from the sun. Izuku wasn't coordinated. He was small, frantic, and desperate to please. He was halfway across when it happened. He didn't trip over a root. He didn't get pushed. He simply stepped on a patch of slick moss with a shoe that had no tread. "Kaken!" The cry was cut short. Katsuki spun around just in time to see it. It wasn't a graceful fall. In the cartoons, characters flailed their arms. They hung in the air for a second. In reality, gravity was instant and cruel. Izuku's feet went out from under him, and he tipped backward, his head striking the edge of the log with a sickening thud before he plummeted into the creek bed below. It was a drop of perhaps 10 feet. Izuku landed headfirst. There was a sound. It was a wet, sharp crack, like a dry piece of firewood being stepped on by a heavy boot. Then a splash. Then silence. Katsuki stood frozen on the bank. The explosions in his hands died out. The cicadas seemed to stop screaming. "Deku?" Izuku was lying in the water. He was face up, but his body was twisted wrong. His legs were splayed on the dry rocks, but his head and shoulders were submerged in the shallow, murky stream. "Get up," Katsuki said. His voice wavered. "Stop faking. It's not funny." Izuku didn't move. The water around his head began to turn a pale, diluted red. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the summer heat. Katsuki scrambled down the muddy bank, his fingernails digging into the dirt, sliding more than running. He splashed into the water, soaking his shorts. "I said get up." Katsuki grabbed Izuku's shirt and pulled him out of the water. When he saw Izuku's face, Katsuki screamed. Izuku's eyes were open. They were staring at the canopy, wide and green, but they were empty. There was no light in them. They were like the glass marbles they played with, vacant objects reflecting the world but seeing nothing. His mouth was slightly open, slack, but it was his neck that made Katsuki vomit. It was loose. Horribly, impossibly loose. When Katsuki pulled him up, Izuku's head lolled to the side at an angle that human anatomy did not allow, the chin resting almost on the shoulder blade. The bone had snapped completely. "Deku?" Katsuki shook him. The head flopped sickeningly. "Deku! Breathe! You gotta breathe!" There was no breath. There was no heartbeat. Izuku's skin, usually flushed from running, was rapidly turning the color of ash. Katsuki, 4 years old and possessing a quirk that could level buildings, realized he was powerless. He pressed his hands to Izuku's chest, ignoring the slime of the river. "Wake up!" He set off a small explosion on Izuku's chest, burning the fabric of the All Might t-shirt. Nothing. No flinch. No cry of pain. "Help!" Katsuki screamed, looking up at the trees. "Mom!" Auntie! Someone! But they were deep in the woods. No one was coming. 1 minute passed. Katsuki was sobbing now, snot running down his face, mixing with the mud on his cheeks. He was clutching Izuku's cooling hand. He knew what death was. He had seen a dead bird once. He knew that when things stopped moving and their eyes went dull, they didn't come back. He had killed him. He had led him here, told him to hurry, and now Deku was broken on the rocks. I'm sorry, Katsuki choked out, rocking back and forth in the stream water. I'm sorry, Izuku, please. 2 minutes passed. The blood flow from the scrape on Izuku's head had stopped, simply because the heart was no longer pumping it. The body was settling into the finality of the grave. Katsuki let go of the hand, terrified by how heavy it felt. He scrambled backward, crab walking over the stones, unable to look away from the corpse of his best friend. Then, the steam started. It began as a wisp, rising from Izuku's neck. Katsuki wiped his eyes, thinking it was a trick of the heat. But it wasn't. The steam grew thicker, white and hissing, smelling faintly of sulfur and ozone. Izuku's body jerked. Katsuki froze. Deku? The body convulsed violently, as if hit by a taser. The sound that followed would haunt Katsuki's nightmares until he was an old man. It was the sound of grinding stone and popping gristle. Snap. Crunch. Click. Under the skin, the cervical vertebrae were realigning. The neck, bent at that horrific angle, forcefully snapped back into straightness. The bruising on the throat vanished in a ripple of golden light that moved beneath the skin like magma. Izuku's chest heaved. A desperate, ragged gasp tore from his throat, the sound of a drowning man finding air. Heya! Izuku sat bolt upright, water cascading off his face. His hands flew to his neck, clawing at the skin. He was screaming, not a cry of fear, but a shriek of pure, unadulterated agony. He thrashed in the water, kicking up spray, curling into a fetal ball while clutching his throat. It hurts. It hurts. Make it stop. Kaken! Katsuki stared, paralyzed. Izuku was pink again. The blood was gone. The eyes were wide and terrified and alive. You! Katsuki whispered, trembling. You were dead. Izuku vomited river water and bile onto the rocks, coughing until his face turned purple. He looked up at Katsuki, tears streaming down his face. My neck. I felt it break, Kaken. I felt it. Katsuki didn't offer a hand. He couldn't. He backed away until his back hit the muddy bank. He looked at the boy who had been a corpse 30 seconds ago, and for the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo felt true fear. The diagnosis came 3 days later. Inko Midoriya sat in the sterile white office of Dr. Tsubasa, her hands twisting a handkerchief into a tight knot. Izuku sat on the examination table, swinging his legs. He looked perfectly fine. There wasn't a scratch on him. Even the burn mark from Katsuki's desperate attempt to wake him had vanished without a scar. I don't understand, Inko said, her voice trembling. Katsuki said, he said Izuku fell? He said his neck. She couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Tsubasa adjusted his thick goggles, looking at the X-rays pinned to the light board. Mrs. Midoriya, the human body retains evidence of trauma. Even if a quirk heals a wound, there is usually scar tissue, or accelerated cell growth markers. But Izuku's scans are pristine. He tapped the image of Izuku's cervical spine. However, the doctor continued, his voice devoid of bedside manner. We ran a stress test on his DNA. We found a dormant metagene that reacts exclusively to cessation of biological function. Inko blinked. Cessation of, you mean death? To be blunt, yes. Dr. Tsubasa turned his chair to face them. We believe Izuku's quirk is a form of retroactive regeneration. It is not a healing factor like Wolverine or super regeneration. Those quirks work constantly to repair damage. Izuku's quirk is a trigger. The doctor leaned forward, interlacing his fingers. It seems that when his heart stops, or brain activity ceases, the quirk activates. It rewinds his biological state to a point prior to the fatal injury. It effectively resets him. Inko covered her mouth to stifle a sob. So, he has to die to use it? It appears so. Izuku stopped swinging his legs. He looked at his hands. He remembered the darkness. He remembered the sound of the snap. He remembered the nothingness that felt like sleeping without dreaming, and then the fire of waking up. Can I still be a hero? Izuku asked, his voice small. The doctor looked at the boy. There was a glint in the man's eyes, something analytical and cold. You are functionally immortal, kid. You could jump off a building, splatter on the pavement, and walk away a minute later. In terms of hero work? You'd be the ultimate meat shield. Doctor! Inko snapped, horrified. I'm just stating the facts, Mrs. Midoriya. He has a quirk. A powerful one. But the activation cost is steep. They registered the quirk that day. On the official forms, Inko's hand shook so hard she could barely write. Name, Izuku Midoriya. Quirk, Phoenix. Description, subject revives from fatal injuries. Body resets to pre-injury state. Inko drove them home in silence. When they got to the apartment, she locked the door, sat on the floor of the Genkin, and hugged Izuku so tight he almost couldn't breathe. She didn't apologize to him. She didn't say, I'm sorry, Izuku. She said, I'm sorry I can't save you from yourself. Childhood ended that summer. The news spread through the neighborhood like a virus. Kids talk. Katsuki talked. He didn't mean to, perhaps, or maybe he did, trying to process the trauma of seeing his friend die. By the time school started again, Izuku had a new nickname. It wasn't just Deku anymore. Zombie. Ghost Boy. When Izuku walked into the classroom, the chatter stopped. Kids who used to play tag with him now gave him a wide berth. They looked at him with morbid curiosity. Is it true? One boy whispered. Did you really snap your neck? My mom says he's cursed. If you hit him, does he die? And then there was Bakugo. Before the creek, Bakugo had been bossy, arrogant, and physical. He would shove Izuku, burn him a little, establish dominance. But after the creek, Bakugo changed. During recess, Izuku approached the group by the sandbox. Kaken, can I play? Bakugo recoiled. He actually took a step back, his eyes wide. It wasn't disgust. It was the look one gives a bomb that might go off. Stay away from me, Bakugo hissed. But, I said get lost. Bakugo shouted, sparks flying from his hands. But he didn't aim them at Izuku. He aimed them at the ground, creating a barrier of dust. Don't come near me. You're a freak. You die and you don't stay dead. It's creepy. Izuku stood there, hand outstretched. I'm still me, Kaken. No, you're not, Bakugo spat, turning his back. Deku died in the river. Whatever you are. I don't want to look at you. That was the first lesson Izuku learned. Immortality is lonely. The second lesson came at age 7. It was a traffic accident. Izuku was walking home from school, distracted, looking at a hero magazine. He stepped into the crosswalk when the light was red. The truck was moving at 40 miles per hour. The impact threw him 20 feet. He hit a lamppost. His chest cavity was crushed instantly. The world went black. Then the fire. The agony of ribs knitting back together, of punctured lungs reinflating, of a stopped heart jump-starting with the force of a frantic drum. Izuku woke up on the asphalt, surrounded by screaming pedestrians. The truck driver was weeping, on his knees, thinking he had just killed a child. Izuku sat up, gasping, wiping blood from his mouth, blood that was rapidly dissolving into steam. He looked at the horrified driver. I'm okay, Izuku wheezed, standing up, though his legs felt like jelly. I'm okay, sir. Don't worry. The driver looked at him like he was a monster. The police arrived. They checked his ID. They saw the quirk, Phoenix marker. They let him go home. Inko cried for 3 hours. Izuku sat in his room, staring at his All Might poster. He realized then that pain was a memory. The body forgets, the cells repair, but the mind remembers the sound of the truck's grill hitting bone. He began to write in his notebooks. Not just about other heroes, but about himself. Analysis of quirk, Phoenix. Revival time, varies based on damage. Next snap, 2 minutes. Blunt force trauma / crushing, 3 minutes. Pain 10 out of 10. Always. Strength boost, none. Speed boost, none. Conclusion. To save anyone, I have to be willing to be the one who doesn't come home, temporarily. By the time Izuku reached middle school, he had died 6 times. 1. The creak, fall/neck snap. 2. The truck blunt force. 3. A villain attack at the mall, falling debris/suffocation. 4. Electrocution, faulty wiring in the apartment complex, he saved a neighbor's cat. 5. Drowning, cramp during swimming class, that one was particularly terrifying. 6. A mugging, knife wound to the artery. He was 14 years old, and he had the eyes of a soldier who had seen too many tours of duty. He was quiet, unassuming, and physically average. He didn't train his body for strength, not yet. He trained his pain tolerance. He would pinch himself until he bled. He would hold his hand over a candle flame just to see how long he could take it. Not because he was masochistic, but because he knew that in a fight, the shock of pain was what killed you before the wound did. If he wanted to be a hero, he had to be able to fight through the dying process. The classroom at Aldera Junior High was a chaotic pit of hormones and minor quirk displays. The teacher stood at the podium, slapping a stack of papers down. "So, you're all third years now," the teacher droned. "It's time to think about your futures." "But who am I kidding? You all want to be heroes," the class erupted. Quirks flared, eyeballs floating, fingers extending, minor telekinesis. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks," the teacher said. "But remember, no quirk usage in school. Now let's see. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, correct?" Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet on the desk. He had grown into his arrogance, sharp and dangerous. "Don't lump me in with these extras, teach. I'm the only one here with the stuff to go pro. I'll surpass All Might." "Oh, right," the teacher mused, looking at his clipboard. "And Midoriya wants to go to UA too, doesn't he?" The room didn't explode into laughter. In the canon of another universe, they would have laughed at the quirkless boy. But here, the room went dead silent. 30 heads turned to look at the back of the class. Izuku shrank into his seat. He wore his uniform buttoned to the chin. He kept his head down. "Midoriya?" a student whispered. "The zombie? Does UA even accept his kind? Imagine fighting him. You kill him, and he just keeps coming. That's not a hero, that's a horror movie villain." Bakugo didn't turn around. His shoulders stiffened. Sparks popped violently against his desk, scorching the wood. "He's not gonna make it," Bakugo growled, his voice low but audible in the silence. "They have an entrance exam. You have to destroy robots." "What are you gonna do, Deku? Jam yourself into the gears and hope your corpse gums up the works?" Izuku looked up, meeting Bakugo's gaze. "It's a valid strategy, Kaken," the class recoiled. It was the calmness of the statement that disturbed them. Izuku didn't say it with bravado. He said it like a mechanic discussing a wrench. "You're sick," Bakugo spat. "You think just because you can't die you're better than us? You're just a punching bag that repairs itself. Don't stand in my way, or I'll blow you to pieces so small you'll never find them all to put yourself back together." "That would probably take about 20 minutes to regenerate," Izuku muttered, opening his notebook. The bell rang. The tension broke, but the atmosphere remained heavy. After class, Izuku packed his bag quickly, trying to avoid confrontation. He took his hero analysis for the future number 13 notebook, and headed for the door. Bakugo intercepted him. He snatched the notebook. "Analysis?" Bakugo scoffed. He didn't burn it this time. He just looked at it with disdain. "You don't analyze how to win. You analyze how to lose without it being permanent. Giving your life is the ultimate hero move," Izuku said quietly. "No!" Bakugo slammed his hand against the wall, cornering Izuku. "Winning is the ultimate hero move. Saving people without dying is the point. If you have to die to win, you're just a victim with a rewind button." He threw the notebook at Izuku's chest. "Don't apply to UA, Deku. I don't want to see your dead body on the news. It pisses me off." Bakugo stormed out with his lackeys. Izuku picked up the notebook, dusting it off. He walked out of the school, taking the long way home, under the underpass. He walked into the shadows, muttering to himself, "He's wrong. If I can take a bullet meant for someone else, if I can hold a villain back for 10 seconds while civilians run, then my death has value. It's the only value I have." The sewer grate rattled behind him. Fluid, thick and smelling of sewage, oozed up from the darkness. A massive, sludge-like entity formed, eyes bulging with madness, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain hissed, his voice wet and gurgling. Izuku turned around. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He analyzed. Liquid body. No solid grasp points. Physical attacks ineffective. Don't worry, kid, the villain lunged, a tendril of sludge shooting forward to wrap around Izuku. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll be all over. The sludge forced itself into Izuku's mouth and nose. It was suffocating, burning, tasting of rot. Izuku clawed at the liquid, but his fingers passed right through. Suffocation, Izuku thought, his vision blurring. Death count number 7. He felt the familiar panic of his lungs burning for oxygen. He felt his heart hammering against his ribs, fighting a losing battle. The villain laughed, enjoying the struggle. That's it, give in. Just let me take over your body. Izuku's struggles weakened. The darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. If I die here, Izuku thought, his consciousness fading, I'll just revive inside him. And then I'll suffocate again. An endless loop. For the first time, terror gripped him. If the villain didn't let him go after he died, he would be trapped in a cycle of death and revival for eternity. His heart stopped. The sludge villain grinned. Gotcha. He felt the body go limp. The villain relaxed, beginning to force his way further down the throat to possess the vessel. But then the vessel burned. Deep inside Izuku's chest, the phoenix sparked. The heat was instantaneous. The sludge villain shrieked as the boy's body temperature skyrocketed to feverish levels during the reconstruction process. Izuku's eyes snapped open. They glowed with a faint, eerie light. His jaw, which had been slack, snapped shut with the force of a hydraulic press. Crunch. He bit down on the villain's sludge tentacle, specifically, on the solid eyeball that had drifted too close to his mouth. Arg! The villain recoiled, thrashing. You little brat! You bit me! Izuku fell to the pavement, coughing up sludge. He was alive again. The adrenaline of revival flooded his system. He didn't wait. He scrambled backward, gasping, I won't. Izuku wheezed, standing up despite the trembling in his legs. I won't stay dead for you. The manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear! A booming voice echoed through the tunnel. A massive figure, muscular and blonde, stomped onto the scene. For I am here! All Might unleashed a Texas smash. The wind pressure alone scattered the sludge villain like rain against the windshield. The villain was incapacitated instantly. All Might stood tall, his smile beaming. He looked down to check on the victim. Are you alright, young ma? All Might paused. He saw Izuku Midoriya. The boy was soaked in sludge. But more disturbingly, steam was rising from his entire body. His skin was knitting itself back together in real time, bruises fading into nothingness. Izuku looked up at his idol, tears forming in his eyes. All Might? Young man, All Might said, his smile faltering just a fraction. You were not breathing a moment ago. I know, Izuku said, wiping his face. It happens a lot. All Might scooped the villain into a soda bottle, but he kept glancing at the boy. He had seen many quirks in his time. He had seen strength, speed, fire, and ice. But he looked at this boy, who stood there with the calm resignation of a funeral director, and he saw something else. He saw a boy who had broken himself to survive, and was ready to do it again. Can I ask you something? Izuku asked, trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. I am in a bit of a rush. All Might said, preparing to jump. Can a hero? Izuku grabbed onto All Might's leg as the hero launched into the air. Can a hero save everyone if the only thing he has to offer is his own life? They soared over the city. The wind roared in their ears. This was the beginning. Not of a story about a boy who became the strongest, but a story about a boy who learned that being unbreakable was not the same as being whole. Below them, in the shopping district, the sludge villain was leaking from the bottle. Explosions were starting to ring out. Katsuki Bakugo was about to meet his fate, and Izuku Midoriya was about to die for the 8th time. The air pressure at 5,000 feet was not kind to the human eardrum, nor was the wind that whipped against Izuku Midoriya's face at 300 miles per hour. His cheeks flapped violently, his eyes streamed tears that dried instantly in the slipstream, and his fingers, white-knuckled and desperate, dug into the fabric of All Might's cargo pants with a grip strength born entirely of terror. Hey! Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is too much! All Might shouted over the roar of the wind, trying to push Izuku's face away with a massive hand. If I let go, I'll die! Izuku screamed, though the wind stole the words from his mouth. You won't die! I'll catch you! No! I mean, I'll hit the ground and splatter and it'll take 20 minutes to reform and I'll lose my backpack. All Might stopped trying to pry him off. The hero's blue eyes widened slightly. Reform? He filed the word away, focusing instead on finding a landing spot. The city of Mizudafu sprawled below them like a circuit board, a grid of gray concrete and asphalt baking in the summer sun. They touched down on the roof of a nondescript office building. All Might landed with the grace of a falling feather, absorbing the impact in his knees, while Izuku collapsed onto the gravel roof, gasping for air. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, a rhythm he cherished, because he knew what it felt like when it stopped. Good grief, All Might sighed, hands on his hips. That was reckless, young man. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but you can't just latch on to people mid-flight. You could have been killed. Izuku pushed himself up, his knees trembling. He looked at the number 1 hero, the symbol of peace, the man whose poster smiled down from his bedroom wall every morning. I had to ask you. No time. I have to get this guy to the police. All Might tapped his cargo pocket, where the sludge villain was safely bottled. Stay out of trouble, kid. Wait. Izuku scrambled forward. The desperation in his chest was hotter than the summer air. All Might. Please. All Might paused, one foot on the railing. Can a hero? Izuku's voice cracked. He squeezed his eyes shut. Can someone be a hero if they don't have any power? If the only thing they can do is die? The wind on the rooftop seemed to die down. The silence stretched, thin and taut. All Might didn't answer immediately. But then, a puff of steam, identical to the steam that rose from Izuku's body when he regenerated, exploded from the hero. Izuku opened his eyes. Standing before him was not the titan of muscle and justice. It was the skeleton of a man, gaunt and sharp-angled, swimming in clothes that were 5 sizes too big. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. All Might? Izuku shrieked. You deflated. I am All Might, the skeletal man said, blood spewing as he spoke. Like a guy sucking in his gut at the pool. It's a flex. He sighed, sitting heavily on the ground. Shit. I'm out of time. Izuku stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the image. But as the shock faded, a strange sense of camaraderie settled in. This man, this broken man, looked like him. He looked like someone who knew what it meant to be damaged. You asked if you can be a hero, All Might said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at Izuku with sunken, shadowed eyes. What do you mean, the only thing you can do is die? Izuku swallowed. He pulled up his sleeve. There were no scars. There never were. My quirk is called Phoenix. I can't stay dead. If I get crushed or shot or drown, I come back, usually within a few minutes. All Might's brows furrowed. Immortality? That's a powerful quirk, isn't it? Why do you sound like it's a curse? Because it doesn't make me strong, Izuku whispered. He looked at his hands. It doesn't make me fast. It doesn't let me save anyone by defeating the villain. All I can do is take the hit. I can jump in front of a bullet so someone else doesn't have to. I can let a villain beat me to death until he gets tired. That's all I am. A meat shield. He looked up, tears finally spilling over. Can I be a hero like you? Can I save people with a power that only hurts me? All Might looked at the boy. He saw the desperation. But he also saw the reality of the profession. All Might lifted his shirt. Izuku gasped. The scar on the hero's side was a crater of twisted, purple tissue. It looked like a spiderweb of agony. I got this 5 years ago, All Might said softly. Respiratory system half destroyed. Stomach entirely removed. I've done thousands of surgeries on myself just to keep moving. Hero work. It's not just about fighting. It's about living to save the next person. He dropped his shirt. The look he gave Izuku was not one of inspiration, but of profound sadness. Young man, if your strategy is to die, then you are not saving yourself. A hero has to save everyone, and that includes himself. If you rely on dying to win, eventually, you might find a way to die that you can't come back from. Or worse, you'll lose your humanity in the process. All Might stood up, his skeletal frame trembling slightly against the wind. Be a police officer. Be a doctor. Those are noble professions. But a hero who treats his own life as disposable trash? No. I cannot in good conscience tell you that is a good idea. He walked to the stairwell door. It's good to dream, kid. But you have to be realistic. The door clicked shut. Izuku stood alone on the roof. The words echoed in his head. Disposable trash. He walked to the railing and looked down at the street. 4 stories up. If he jumped, he would hit the concrete in about 1.5 seconds. His skull would fracture. His brain matter would scramble. He would be dead. And then, 3 minutes later, he would wake up, the blood would evaporate into steam, and he would be fine. He gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. I know I'm realistic, he whispered to the empty air. I know I'm trash. But even trash can be recycled. The walk home was a blur. Izuku moved through the streets of Muzurufu like a ghost, unseen and unheard. The heat of the afternoon had turned into a suffocating humidity as evening approached. Shadows lengthened, stretching across the pavement like grasping fingers. He stopped at a crosswalk, staring blankly at the red light. Maybe Kaken was right, he thought bitterly. Maybe I should just be a quirkless nobody. At least then, when I die, I'd stay dead. I wouldn't have to wake up and wash the blood out of my clothes. Boom. The sound was distant, but heavy. A tremor ran through the ground. Izuku looked up. A column of black smoke was rising from the Tatooine shopping district, the same direction All Might had flown from. A villain? His feet moved before his brain gave permission. It was instinct. It was the moth flying toward the flame, knowing it would burn but unable to resist the light. He ran. When he arrived at the scene, the devastation was absolute. The alleyway was an inferno. Flames licked up the sides of the buildings, shattering windows and melting siding. The crowd was pushed back behind yellow police tape, a sea of terrified faces illuminated by the orange glow of the fire, and in the center of the chaos was the sludge villain. He was massive now, having absorbed trash, debris, and the sheer panic of the environment. He was a towering wave of muck and malice. But the heroes were doing nothing. Death Arms was punching the sludge and getting stuck. It's no use. I can't get a grip. Kamui Woods was retreating from the flames. I can't get close. The fire, empty lady was stuck outside the narrow alley. I need a 2-lane road at least. They were bystanders. Professional, licensed, powerful bystanders. Why aren't they moving? Izuku muttered, pushing his way to the front of the crowd. Someone's in there. He squinted through the smoke and heat. The villain had a hostage. A body was half submerged in the fluid, only the face visible. The hostage was thrashing, explosions popping weakly against the villain's liquid body, ash blonde hair. Sharp, terrifying red eyes. Kaken. Izuku's heart stopped, not literally, this time, but metaphorically. Bakugo was dying. The sludge villain was forcing itself into Bakugo's mouth and nose, suffocating him, drowning him in sewage. The look in Bakugo's eyes wasn't anger. It wasn't arrogance. It was a plea. Help me. Izuku didn't think. He didn't consider All Might's words. He didn't consider the fact that he had no strength, no speed, and no plan. He ducked under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted. Izuku sprinted. His yellow backpack bounced against his shoulders. The heat was intense, stinging his eyebrows, drying his throat instantly. What do I do? What do I do? He had no weapon. He had no super strength to blow the villain away. He couldn't pull Bakugo out. The sludge was too thick, the grip too tight. Think. The villain saw him coming. You again? The brat from the tunnel? The villain raised a massive tendril of sludge to crush him. Izuku's mind flashed to his notebook. Quirk analysis, Phoenix. Revival displaces matter. The release of energy during reconstruction is exothermic. The body resets. He realized, with a cold, crystalline clarity, that there was only one way to break the villain's hold. He couldn't pull Bakugo out. He had to make the villain let go, and nothing made a predator drop its prey faster than choking. Die! The villain roared, slamming the tentacle down. Izuku didn't dodge. He jumped. He threw himself directly into the mass of the main body, right below where Bakugo was held. DKU! Bakugo's muffled scream barely escaped the sludge. Izuku hit the liquid with a wet slap. He didn't fight to swim. He opened his mouth and inhaled the sludge. He let it fill him. He let the villain wrap around him. If I die inside him. The darkness took him. The sludge filled his lungs, burning like acid. The pressure crushed his ribs. It was the eighth death. It was cold, slimy, and terrifying. Stop the heart. Reset. Izuku's body went limp in the villain's grip. The sludge villain paused. He felt the struggle of the green-haired boy cease instantly. The heartbeat he had felt against his fluid form vanished. Ha! The villain laughed, his voice gurgling. Weak! Died instantly. Another meat suit for him. The villain's gloating was cut short by a sudden, intense spike of temperature. Deep inside the sludge, where Izuku's corpse floated, a reaction began. The cells, detecting the cessation of life, ignited. The Phoenix quirk didn't just heal. It rewound reality for the user's biology. And it did so with violent prejudice. Steam erupted from the villain's body. The sludge began to bubble and boil. Gah! Hot! Hot! The villain shrieked, his liquid form losing cohesion as the water content evaporated rapidly. Inside the villain, Izuku's eyes snapped open. He was alive. The sludge in his lungs vanished, replaced by fresh air generated by the reset. His crushed ribs snapped outward, pushing the sludge away. Izuku thrashed. He was no longer a corpse. He was a solid, revitalized object expanding rapidly inside a liquid container. He kicked out, his foot finding purchase on something solid, the ground beneath the villain. He launched himself upward. His hand broke the surface of the sludge, right next to Bakugo's face. Bakugo stared, wide-eyed, as Izuku clawed his way out of the villain's chest like a demon rising from a tar pit. Izuku was covered in slime, his skin glowing faintly pink from the heat of regeneration. Kaken! Izuku gagged, spitting out a final glob of sludge. Breathe, you! Bakugo coughed, air rushing into his freed airway. You died. I felt you die. I got better. Izuku screamed. The villain, writhing in pain from the internal burn, tried to re-solidify. You little pest! I'll kill you again! I'll kill you 1,000 times! A massive wave of sludge rose up, forming a spear tip aimed directly at the two boys. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's collar. He knew he couldn't dodge it. He didn't have the speed. He positioned himself in front of Bakugo, spreading his arms wide. Fine, Izuku thought, staring at the incoming death. Make it 9. Bakugo watched the spear descend. He watched Izuku's back, the way the boy braced himself to be skewered. Move, Deku! Move, you idiot! But the blow never landed. There was a flash of light. A gust of wind so powerful it tore the pavement from the street. I really am pathetic, a voice boomed, vibrating in their chests. All Might stood there. He was blocking the sludge spear with one hand. Blood poured from his mouth, steam hissed from his body, but he was in his muscle form. He was huge. He was angry. I told you to be realistic, All Might roared, his blue eyes burning with a mixture of fury and shame. But I didn't practice what I preached. Pros are always risking their lives, All Might. Izuku whispered. Detroit. All Might drew back his fist. The air pressure dropped. The clouds above swirled. Smash! The punch didn't even touch the villain physically. The air cannon created by the swing was enough. It blasted the sludge villain apart, atomizing the liquid into a harmless mist. It changed the weather, creating an updraft that summoned rain clouds within seconds. The shockwave knocked Izuku and Bakugo backward. They tumbled across the pavement, skidding to a halt as black rain began to fall from the sky. Silence descended on the street. The crowd stared. The heroes stared. All Might stood in the center of the crater, his fist raised, steam rising from his body to mingle with the rain. The scolding was inevitable. 20 minutes later, the police had secured the scattered remains of the villain. The paramedics were checking civilians. The heroes had separated the two boys. On one side, the press and the heroes were swarming Bakugo. "That quirk is amazing, kid. You held out for so long. You're a natural-born hero. Toughness like that is rare." Bakugo sat on the back of an ambulance, a towel around his shoulders. He wasn't listening. He was staring across the plaza at Izuku. His red eyes were unreadable, filled with a tumult of shock, confusion, and lingering horror. On the other side, Death Arms and Kamui Woods were looming over Izuku. Izuku sat on the curb, hugging his knees. He had wiped the sludge off, but the smell remained. "Are you insane?" Death Arms shouted, pointing a thick finger at Izuku's face. "You have a death wish? You ran into a villain attack with no plan, no weapon, and no backup." Izuku tried to speak. "We saw you," Kamui Woods added, his wooden voice stern. "You jumped inside him. You suffocated yourself. Do you have any idea how traumatizing that is for the civilians watching? Seeing a kid die on live TV? I knew I would come back," Izuku mumbled, looking at the asphalt. "That's not the point," Death Arms roared. "Just because you can fix a broken window doesn't mean you go around smashing them. You interfered with hero work. You could have been taken hostage too. You were a liability. But—" Izuku looked up, his eyes dull. "But Kaken couldn't breathe. And you guys, you weren't doing anything." The heroes flinched. The truth stung. "We were waiting for a suitable quirk," Death Arms defended weakly. "We were minimizing damage. I minimized the casualty count to 0, Izuku said softly. "Well, 0 permanent casualties. Go home," Kamui Woods sighed, rubbing his temples. "Just go home, kid. And don't ever do that again. Leave the saving to the pros who know how to stay alive." Izuku stood up. He bowed deeply. "I'm sorry for causing trouble." He turned and walked away. He didn't look at Bakugo. He didn't look at the crowd. He just walked into the gathering twilight, the sounds of praise for Bakugo fading behind him. Liability, he thought. Meat shield. Trauma. He touched his chest. His heart was beating steadily. It was a miracle of biology, a perpetual motion machine fueled by trauma. But it felt heavy. All Might was right. I'm just a tragedy waiting to happen. He turned the corner onto his street, the streetlights flickering on. DKU. The shout was raw, angry. Footsteps pounded on the pavement behind him. Izuku stopped and turned. Katsuki Bakugo was running toward him, his breath ragged. He stopped a few yards away, hunched over, hands on his knees. "Kaken?" Bakugo stood up. He was shaking. "I didn't ask for your help. You hear me?" Izuku blinked. "I know. I was fine. I would have gotten free," Bakugo yelled, but there was no heat in it. His voice wavered. You jumped in there. You died. Again. Bakugo took a step forward, grabbing Izuku's collar. But instead of an explosion, he just gripped the fabric tight. "Stop doing that!" Bakugo screamed, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. "Stop dying in front of me. Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what it sounds like when your heart stops? Because I do. I remember the sound from the creek. I heard it today in the sludge. Kaken, you think you're a hero?" Bakugo shoved him back, but gently this time. "You're just a nightmare that won't end. Don't think I owe you anything. I don't owe you shit." Bakugo turned around, wiping his eyes aggressively. "Just stay alive, you idiot. For once, just stay alive without dying first." He stomped away, his shoulders hunched. Izuku watched him go. It was the closest thing to a thank you, or an apology, he would ever get. "I am here," the voice came from around the corner. All Might slid out from behind a telephone pole in his muscle form, striking a pose, before instantly exploding into a cloud of steam and reverting to his skeletal state. He coughed up an alarming amount of blood. All Might?" Izuku gasped. "Why are you here? You should be at the hospital." I shook off the reporters, All Might wheezed, straightening up and wiping his mouth. "And the paramedics. I'm good at escaping. He walked over to Izuku. The street was quiet now, save for the distant sound of traffic. Young man. I have a correction to make. Izuku looked down. You don't have to scold me too. The other heroes covered it. I know. I was reckless. I was a liability. No, All Might said firmly. Izuku looked up. On that rooftop, I told you that you couldn't be a hero. I told you to be realistic. I judged you based on your quirk, or rather, on how you used it. All Might placed a hand on his chest. At the scene, none of the pros moved. Not Death Arms. Not Kamui Woods. Not me. We all had excuses. Too much fire. Too slippery. Time limit. All Might took a step closer. The lamplight cast long shadows over his gaunt face, highlighting the intensity in his eyes. But you, timid, quirkless in combat, you ran. Izuku's lip trembled. Why did you run, young man? I don't know, Izuku whispered. My legs, they just moved on their own. He looked like he was asking for help. And I knew I could take it. I knew I could die and it wouldn't matter. It mattered, All Might said. His voice broke. It mattered to me. All Might dropped to one knee so he was eye level with Izuku. I watched you die today. And I watched you come back. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. You have the heart of a hero, the absolute, pure instinct to save others at any cost. But you lack the power to survive that instinct. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Top heroes have stories about their bodies moving before they could think. You have that. But if you keep going down this path, relying on your immortality, you will destroy yourself. You will break your mind, even if your body heals. I don't want to watch you die again, Midoriya. I want to watch you live. Izuku began to cry. Not the silent tears from before, but great, heaving sobs. He clutched his chest. So All Might said, smiling his true smile, not the showman's grin, but a soft, human expression. I have a proposal. I have been looking for a successor. Someone to inherit my power. Inherit? Izuku sniffled. But quirks can't be transferred. Mine can, All Might said. It is a torch, passed from one holder to the next. It cultivates power and passes it on. The name of my quirk is One for All. All Might stood up, extending a hand. You have the will to sacrifice everything. That is something I cannot teach. But I can give you the power to ensure that you don't have to sacrifice your life every time you fight. The wind blew through the street, carrying the scent of rain and ozone. Izuku Midoriya. You are worthy of my power. Not because you can die, but because you deserve to live while saving others. Izuku looked at the hand. It was scarred, large and warm. For 10 years, he had been the boy who broke. The boy who was disposable. The zombie. Now, he was being offered a chance to be unbreakable. He reached out and took All Might's hand. He squeezed it with everything he had. I'll do it, Izuku sobbed. I'll be the hero who lives. All Might laughed, a wheezing, happy sound. Good answer. But be warned, kid. The training is going to be hell. And with your quirk, well, let's just say we might have to be careful you don't accidentally reset your muscle gains. Izuku laughed too, through his tears. It was the first time he had laughed, truly laughed, since the day at the creek. The contract was sealed. The vessel was chosen. And for the first time in his life, Izuku Midoriya looked forward to a future where death wasn't the opening move. But as he walked home that night, the phantom sensation of sludge in his lungs lingered, a cold reminder that the phoenix was always there, waiting in the wings for the next time he fell. And he knew deep down that one for all or not, the habit of dying would be a hard one to break. The smell of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a unique cocktail of rotting kelp, rusted iron, and wet cardboard. It was the scent of neglect. For Izuku Midoriya, however, over the last 10 months, it had become the scent of purgatory. Push, young Midoriya. Push past the limit. All Might stood atop a precarious pile of crushed refrigerators, his skeletal form silhouetted against the rising sun. He was wearing a tracksuit that hung off his emaciated frame like a tarp over a scarecrow. Izuku was currently harnessed to the front axle of a rusted pickup truck that lacked wheels. He was dragging it through the sand. His heels dug trenches into the beach. His lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. I can't. Izuku wheezed, his vision swimming with black spots. My legs, they're burning. The burning is growth. All Might shouted, pumping a bony fist. Tear the muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger. That is the essence of training. Izuku screamed, a raw, guttural sound, and heaved. The truck moved an inch. Then another. The strain on his cardiovascular system was immense. His heart, already prone to panic, hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump, and then it skipped. Izuku's eyes rolled back. The truck stopped moving. His hands went slack on the ropes. He pitched forward, face planting into the sand with the grace of a sack of flour. Silence descended on the beach. Young Midoriya? All Might hopped down from the trash pile, landing softly. Come now, take a breather, but don't nap in the... All Might turned the boy over. Izuku's lips were blue. His eyes were open and fixed on the sky, pupils dilated. There was no breath. No pulse. Shit! All Might cursed, a word he would never use in public. He raised a hand to start CPR, but he froze. He knew the drill by now. This was the 4th time this month. He stepped back, checking his watch. Time of death, 6:02 a.m. 10 seconds passed. The seagulls cried overhead, indifferent to the corpse on the beach. 20 seconds. Then the steam. It rose from Izuku's chest, a hiss of escaping heat that smelled of sulfur and copper. The boy's body convulsed. A visible ripple of golden light traveled from his core to his extremities, forcing the heart to contract with a violence that shook his entire frame. Gah! Izuku sat up, vomiting a mixture of bile and seawater onto the sand. He clutched his chest, his fingernails digging into his tracksuit. It stopped. Izuku gasped, hyperventilating. It stopped again. I felt it stop. All Might sighed, handing the boy a water bottle. That's the 4th time, kid. You pushed your heart rate over 220. Your body shut down. Izuku took the water with shaking hands, the phantom pain of cardiac arrest slowly fading, replaced by the crushing disappointment of reality. He looked up at All Might with tear-filled eyes. Does it count? All Might looked at the truck, then back at the boy. He shook his head solemnly. I'm afraid not, my boy. Your quirk, it's a reset button. It restores you to a state of homeostasis prior to the fatal injury. The fatigue toxins? Gone. The micro-tears in your muscles that we need for growth? Erased. Izuku slammed his fist into the sand. Damn it! This was the cruel irony of the Phoenix quirk. To build muscle, one had to damage the body. But if Izuku damaged the body too much and died, the quirk viewed the gains as trauma and wiped the slate clean. He had to toe the line of absolute exhaustion without crossing into death. I lost the whole morning's progress, Izuku whispered, devastated. I'm back to 0 for the day. Not 0, All Might corrected gently. Your mind remembers the effort. Your technique remains. But physically, yes. You are fresh as a daisy. All Might crouched down. You have to learn moderation, Izuku. Most heroes push until they break. You push until you die. But for you, dying is the easy way out. Living with the strain? That's the hard part. Izuku wiped his mouth. He stood up, the steam fading from his skin. He looked at the truck. I have to do it again. Midoriya, maybe we should rest. I have to do it again. Izuku grabbed the ropes. His eyes burned with a terrifying intensity. The entrance exam is in 3 hours. I haven't earned the power yet. If I can't move this truck without dying, I don't deserve one for all. All Might watched him. He saw the madness in the boy's eyes, the martyrdom that Bakugo had warned him about, the belief that his body was just a tool to be used and discarded. It terrified All Might, but it also inspired him. All right, All Might said softly. 1 more set. But keep your heart rate under 200. If you die again, I'm carrying you to the exam myself. 3 hours later, the transfer. The beach was clean. Or at least, a small section of it was. A mountain of trash had been consolidated into a somewhat artistic ziggurat, atop which Izuku Midoriya stood, screaming his victory to the heavens. He was shirtless, his body glistening with sweat. He had muscles now, lean, corded muscle earned through agonizing repetition and careful avoidance of the grave. He looked less like a victim and more like a warrior. All Might stood at the base, holding a tuft of golden hair. You made it, All Might said, looking at his phone. Just in time. The ceremony of inheritance. Izuku stumbled down the trash pile, his legs shaking. This time, he hadn't died. The fatigue was real. He felt heavy, sore, and incredibly alive. I'm ready, All Might. Excellent. All Might beamed. I have just the thing to bestow my power upon you. He held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku blinked. The majestic atmosphere popped like a soap bubble. Excuse me? It doesn't matter what it is, All Might explained, waving the hair. It's about the DNA. You have to ingest my DNA to receive the torch. Now swallow. We don't have time for a 5-course meal. Izuku took the hair. He looked at it. He thought about the truck, the sludge villain, the creek, the broken necks and stopped hearts. He thought about the power to save people without dying. He swallowed the hair dry. It scratched his throat. Gross, Izuku gagged. It takes a few hours to digest and activate, All Might said, transforming into his buff form for a brief second to give a thumbs up before deflating again in a cough of blood. Go! Get to UA! And remember Midoriya. All Might's expression turned serious. One for all is a stockpile of power. Your body is the vessel. Right now you are a glass that has just been filled with a fire hose. If you aren't careful, the glass won't just crack. It will shatter. I know, Izuku said, adjusting his backpack straps. But I'm good at putting myself back together. That's what I'm afraid of, All Might murmured as the boy ran off toward the train station. The gates of UA High. The campus of UA was intimidating. It wasn't just a school. It was a fortress of glass and steel, a monument to the superhuman society. Izuku stood at the main gate, feeling the phantom itch of the hair in his stomach. Do I feel stronger? He clenched his fist. Nothing happened. No lightning. No super strength. Just the same hand that had clawed its way out of a grave a dozen times. Out of my way, Deku. The voice was low and dangerous. Izuku flinched, stepping aside as Katsuki Bakugo stalked past. Bakugo didn't look at him. He stared straight ahead, his shoulders hunched in his signature aggressive posture. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku squeaked. Bakugo paused. He didn't turn around. Don't die in the practical. It'll invalidate the test results for the rest of us if they have to clean you up. It was the closest Bakugo could get to expressing concern. Izuku took it. I'll try not to. Bakugo scoffed, and kept walking. Izuku exhaled, taking a step forward. His foot caught on the lip of the pavement. Gravity, his oldest enemy, took hold. Here we go, he thought, bracing for impact. Nose break. 2 minutes regeneration. But he didn't hit the ground. He floated. Whoa! A cheerful voice chimed. Are you okay? Izuku opened his eyes. He was hovering 2 inches off the concrete. Beside him was a girl with a round face, rosy cheeks, and brown hair bobbed around a perpetual smile. She touched her fingertips together, and Izuku dropped gently to his feet. It's my quirk, she said brightly. Sorry for using it without asking. But it's bad luck to trip, right? WW what? Izuku stammered. A girl. A nice girl. Talking to him. Without asking if he was a zombie. I'm Ochako Uraraka. She said. You look nervous. I am too. But let's do our best. She waved and walked off toward the building. Izuku stood there, his face burning. She touched me and didn't recoil, he thought. She saved me from falling. For the first time, someone had saved him, and it wasn't All Might. It was a small gesture, but to the boy who usually had to die to fix his mistakes, it felt like a miracle. The practical exam, Battle Center B. The written exam had been a breeze. Izuku could analyze quirks and hero laws in his sleep. But the practical. Izuku stood in the crowd of examinees outside the massive gates of Battle Center B. He was wearing his green tracksuit. He was shaking. Inside his stomach, something was happening. The fireball All Might had described was beginning to form. It felt like he had swallowed a star. It was hot, heavy, and terrifyingly volatile. How do I use it? All Might hadn't had time to explain the mechanics. Clench my butt cheeks and yell smash? That can't be it. And start. President Mick's voice boomed from the tower. The other students hesitated. Izuku hesitated. What's wrong? There are no countdowns in real fights. Go! 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 The students surged forward. Izuku was swept up in the tide. He ran into the mock city, his eyes darting around. Robots. I need points. Just 1 point. I just need to destroy one. A one-pointer, a mechanical drone on a single wheel, careened around the corner. Target acquired. It beeped. Izuku froze. Okay. Okay. One for all. Channel it. He tried to summon the power. He focused on his right arm. He felt the energy surge, a tsunami trying to fit through a garden hose. Too much. It's too much. Fear gripped him. If he released this, he wouldn't just break his arm. He would explode. He hesitated. The robot didn't. Its mechanical arm swung out, striking Izuku across the chest. Gah! Izuku was thrown backward, skidding across the pavement. His shirt tore. A long gash opened up on his shoulder from the rough concrete. Steam immediately hissed from the wound. Within seconds, the skin knit back together. Whoa! A student with a tail muttered as he ran past. Did you see that guy? He was bleeding a second ago. Ignore him. Get the points. Izuku scrambled up. He had 0 points. The exam was 10 minutes long, and 2 minutes were already gone. He ran. He found a 2-pointer. He tried to kick it, forgetting to use OFA. His foot bounced off the metal chassis with a painful throb. The robot swatted him away like a fly. He died briefly, when a 3-pointer collapsed the wall onto him. It was a quick death. Crushed skull. Darkness. 30 seconds later, the rubble shifted. Izuku crawled out, dusting brick powder off his regenerated head, coughing up dust. 0 points, he panicked, checking the clock. 5 minutes left. I have 0 points, he was failing. He was going to be the immortal quirkless kid who couldn't even break a robot. The 0-pointer. The ground began to shake. It wasn't a rumble, it was an earthquake. The glass in the mock city's windows shattered. Dust rose in choking clouds. From the central avenue, a shadow fell over the examinees. The 0-pointer. It was a monstrosity. A robot the size of a skyscraper, looming over the streets like a god of destruction. Its treads crushed the pavement. Its single red eye scanned the ants below. What is that? It's huge! Run! It's not worth any points. The crowd of students broke. Panic, primal and contagious, swept through them. They turned and fled, a stampede of quirks and terror. Izuku turned to run with them. Run! Get away! Live to fight another day. Ow! The cry was faint, buried under the sound of grinding gears and screaming students. Izuku stopped. He looked back. In the middle of the street, trapped under a pile of debris, was the girl. Uraraka. She was struggling to free her leg, but a massive slab of concrete had her pinned. The 0-pointer was approaching. Its massive treads were churning up the road, heading directly for her. She's stuck, Izuku whispered. The other students were gone. The pros watching in the monitoring room were too far away to intervene in time. She saved me, Izuku thought. She stopped me from falling. The logic of the exam vanished. The desire for points vanished. The fear of failure vanished. There was only the sight of a person in danger, and the knowledge that he was the only one there. Izuku's legs moved. He didn't run away. He ran toward the Titan. Hey! Izuku screamed, though the robot couldn't hear him. He sprinted toward the trapped girl, but he realized he couldn't lift the rock. Not in time. And the robot was going to crush them both. I have to stop the robot. He looked up. The face of the 0-pointer was hundreds of feet in the air. I need to jump. I need power. He felt the fire in his gut. The one for all. All Might said I'm a glass. If I use this, I'll shatter. Izuku gritted his teeth. He didn't care about shattering. He was good at being broken. He crouched low, channeling the power into his legs. He didn't know how to regulate it. He didn't know 5% or 10%. He only knew the toggle switch, on or OFF. He flipped the switch to on. One for all. The power flooded his legs. It wasn't just strength. It was an explosion contained within skin. 100%. Izuku jumped. Crack. The sound of his launch was sickening. The force of 100% OFA detonated in his legs. Both of his femurs shattered instantly from the torque. The muscles tore apart like wet tissue paper, but the propulsion was absolute. Izuku launched into the sky like a missile, leaving a crater in the asphalt where he had stood. The pain was blinding, white-hot agony that shot up his spine, but the adrenaline masked it for a split second. He soared upward, higher than the buildings, higher than the robot's head. He looked down at the machine. He clenched his right fist. He could feel the power pooling there, glowing with red veins of energy. If I punch this, my arm is gone. It doesn't matter. Smayas! He swung. The fist connected with the zero-pointer's faceplate. The impact was cataclysmic. The air pressure alone caved in the robot's metal skull. A shockwave rippled out, shattering windows for 3 blocks. The massive machine groaned, crumpled, and was blasted backward as if hit by a train. Izuku's right arm disintegrated, not literally to dust, but the bones pulverized. The skin split open from shoulder to fingertips, blood spraying into the air. The recoil force traveled up his arm, into his chest, and slammed into his heart like a sledgehammer. Time seemed to slow. Izuku hung in the air, a broken marionette. He saw the robot falling. He saw the girl safe, and then his heart stopped. The shock of 100% OFA, combined with the catastrophic trauma to 3 limbs, was too much. His body shut down. Death count 9? 10? I lost track. Izuku began to fall. He was a corpse plummeting from the sky. Gravity took hold of his limp form. Below, Uraraka watched in horror. He defeated it? Then she saw him falling. He wasn't moving. His arm was a purple, twisted ruin. His legs were dangling at unnatural angles. He's gonna die! She screamed. She slapped her own cheeks, fighting the nausea of overuse. Release! She slapped the floating debris, freeing herself, and then scrambled to get a solid footing. She touched her fingers together. Please, make him light. She couldn't reach him. He was falling too fast. Izuku hit the ground. It wasn't a hero landing. It was a wet, heavy thud. He landed on his back in the middle of the street. The sound of more bones breaking echoed in the silence left by the defeated robot. Time's up! President Mike yelled. The dust settled. The students began to creep back out from the alleys. They gathered in a circle around the fallen boy. Is he? Oh my God! Look at his arm. Did he survive that? Uraraka crawled over to him, tears streaming down her face. She reached out to check his pulse. Her fingers touched his neck. Nothing. She gasped, pulling her hand back. He's not breathing. Someone help. He's not breathing. Panic erupted. Get a teacher. He's dead. He killed himself to save us. Suddenly, a low hiss cut through the panic. Uraraka froze. She looked at the body. Steam was rising from Izuku's skin. It started at his mangled arm, thick white clouds that obscured the limb. Then his legs. Then his chest. What is that? Someone whispered. Is he burning? Snap. The sound was loud, like a gunshot. Izuku's right arm, which had been twisted backward, violently jerked into place. The purple bruising vanished in a wave of golden luminescence. Crunch. Click. His legs straightened out, the shattered femurs knitting together with audible grinding noises. The students recoiled, horrified. What the hell is happening? Is he a zombie? The steam grew thicker, enveloping Izuku in a cocoon of heat. Then came the gasp. Hiya! Izuku's eyes flew open. He sat bolt upright, his back arching off the pavement. He clawed at his chest, his fingernails tearing the ruined remains of his shirt. He vomited, a splatter of blood and stomach acid, onto the street. Ah! Izuku hyperventilated, his eyes darting around wildly. The pain of the 100% smash was gone physically, but the memory of his arm exploding was fresh in his mind. He clutched his right arm, checking it. It was whole. It was unblemished. I'm alive, he wheezed. I'm alive. He looked around at the circle of terrified faces. They weren't looking at him with admiration. They were looking at him with pure, unadulterated fear. He put himself back together, a student whispered. Here, here. Make way. An old woman in a white coat hobbled through the crowd. Recovery girl. She looked at the devastation, the destroyed robot, the crater, and the boy sitting in a pool of his own dissolving blood. She looked at Izuku. Her eyes narrowed. Young man, she said, her voice sharp. Did you break every bone in your body just now? Yes, ma'am, Izuku croaked. And you fixed it yourself? Yes, ma'am. Recovery girl sighed, shaking her head. I can't treat you if you're already healed. It drains your stamina to fix what isn't broken. She handed him some gummies. Eat these. Your blood sugar must be non-existent. She turned to the other students. All right, show's over. If you're injured, come to the tent. If you're just traumatized by the boy who refuses to stay dead, go home. Uraraka remained kneeling. She looked at Izuku. He was shaking, wiping blood from his chin. You, she whispered. You saved me. Izuku looked at her. He offered a weak, trembling smile. It was the only way I could move the robot. I didn't have any points, so... Points? Uraraka stared at him. You died for points? No, Izuku said softly. I died because you looked like you needed help. He stood up. His legs held. He picked up the shreds of his shirt. I think I failed the exam, he muttered, looking at the scoreboard. 0 points. I failed. He began to walk toward the exit, his head hung low. The other students parted for him, like the Red Sea, giving the immortal boy a wide, fearful berth. 1 week later, the apartment was quiet. Inko was pacing in the living room. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at a dumbbell. He had failed. He knew it. He had 0 combat points. He had revealed his creepy quirk to everyone. He had traumatized a nice girl. Izuku! It's here! Inko burst into the room, holding an envelope with the UA seal. Izuku took it. He sat at his desk. He opened it with a letter opener, expecting a rejection slip. A hologram disc fell out. It activated. I am here as a projection. All Might appeared, filling the small room with his boisterous presence. Young Midoriya. It has been a week. I apologize for not contacting you, but I have been busy navigating the bureaucracy of teaching. All Might coughed, composing himself. You scored 0 combat points. A terrible score. Historically bad. Izuku put his head in his hands. However, All Might pointed at the camera. A hero course that rejects those who save others is no hero course at all. You risked everything to save that girl. And you paid the ultimate price. Temporarily, of course, but the intent was there. The video shifted. It showed Uraraka standing in the teacher's lounge. Please, give him my points. He saved me. He jumped even though he knew he would get hurt. At least, give him a chance. Izuku's eyes widened. She tried to negotiate for you, All Might said gently. But there was no need. The scoreboard appeared. Villain points 0. Rescue points 60. 60 points. All Might shouted. Izuku Midoriya. You passed with flying colors. Your willingness to sacrifice yourself is your greatest weapon, and your greatest danger. But here at UA, we will teach you how to use it without breaking. All Might extended a hand toward the screen. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat there. Tears streamed down his face, hot and fast. He had made it. He wasn't just a meat shield. He was a hero. Inko hugged him from behind, crying just as hard. You did it, Izuku. You did it. I did it, he whispered. But as he looked at his hand, the hand that had exploded and reformed, he remembered the feeling of his heart stopping. He remembered the cold. He had gotten in. Now, he just had to survive the curriculum. And with Aizawa as a teacher, Izuku had a feeling that dying was going to be the easy part. Shota Aizawa was a man who appreciated logic. Logic was clean. Logic was linear. Logic dictated that if you trained hard, you got stronger. If you assessed the situation correctly, you survived. And if you had 0 potential, you were cut loose before you could get yourself killed. He sat in the faculty office, a dark coffee mug steaming in his hand, staring at a file that defied all logic. Student number 18, Izuku Midoriya, Quirk, Phoenix. Type, emitter/mutation hybrid, biological trigger. Description: subject possesses the ability to biologically reset to a state of homeostasis immediately following the cessation of vital functions. Regeneration is instantaneous upon death. Subject retains memory of trauma. Aizawa tapped the paper. There was a medical addendum stapled to the back, written by Recovery Girl. Note: subject has also recently acquired a stockpile-type strength quirk. However, his body cannot handle the output. He breaks his bones to use it. He relies on the Phoenix aspect to repair the damage caused by his own attacks. Warning: subject displays extremely low self-preservation instincts. Problem child, Aizawa muttered, his eyes narrowing. He hated this. He had expelled an entire class of first years last year because they lacked potential. But this was different. This wasn't a lack of potential. This was a surplus of recklessness. Midoriya Izuku didn't want to be a hero. He wanted to be a martyr. Aizawa stood up, grabbing his yellow sleeping bag. He had a class to teach, and he had a feeling that today, he was going to have to crush a dream to save a life. The atmosphere in Class 1A was thick enough to choke on. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at the grain of the wood. He could feel the eyes on him. It was subtle, but it was there. The quick glances from the boy with the tail, the nervous side-eye from the small boy with purple balls for hair. They knew. Rumors traveled faster than light in a hero's school. The boy who exploded at the entrance exam. The boy who fell from the sky, died on the pavement, and put himself back together. Remove your feet from the desk. Tenya Ida was gesturing wildly at Bakugo. Ha! Bakugo sneered. Stop ordering me around, Four Eyes. Izuku shrank in his seat. Bakugo was in a foul mood. Worse than usual. Since the sludge incident, since the acceptance letters, Bakugo had been quiet. A simmering, boiling quiet. Suddenly, the door slid open. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The class froze. A man lying in a yellow sleeping bag wormed his way into the room like a lethargic caterpillar. He stood up, unzipped the bag, and stepped out. He looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. The class gasped. A homeroom teacher? This guy. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a gym uniform. Put these on and meet me on the grounds. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. A test? Ochako Uraraka piped up. But what about the entrance ceremony? The orientation? Aizawa turned. His hair hung in greasy curtains over his eyes. If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for leisurely events. Yuri is known for its freestyle teaching system. That applies to us teachers as well. He looked directly at Izuku. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without quirks. Today you'll use your quirks. Aizawa's grin was devoid of humor. The country still insists on prohibiting quirks when calculating the averages of physical records. It's irrational. But here, we look at what you can actually do. He pointed a finger at Bakugo. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. They moved to the field. The sun was high and brutal. The air smelled of baked dirt and potential ozone. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. Die! Boom! The explosion was massive. The ball rocketed into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke. 705.2 meters, Aizawa read from his device. The class erupted. Awesome! This looks like fun! We can use our quirks as much as we want. Aizawa lowered the device. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Fun, huh? He looked at them with cold, dead eyes. You have 3 years to become heroes. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He smiled. It was a terrifying expression. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with expulsion. The class screamed. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, big accidents, selfish villains, Aizawa listed, pushing his hair back. Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted. Japan is covered in unfairness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. If you wanted to go to Mickey D's with your friends after school, too bad. For the next 3 years, UA will do all it can to give you one hardship after another. His eyes locked onto Izuku again. Go plus ultra. Now overcome it. Izuku swallowed hard. His throat felt like sandpaper. Last place gets expelled. He looked at his hands. Without one for all, he was just a reasonably fit teenager. He had no speed quirk like Ida. No strength quirk like Sato. No gravity manipulation like Uraraka. And if he did use one for all, he remembered the feeling of his arm exploding. He remembered the feeling of his heart stopping. If I use it, I break. If I break, I die. If I die, I come back, but I lose time. I lose momentum. And Aizawa was watching him. Like a hawk watching a mouse that was about to run off a cliff. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida and Azuri lined up. Bang. Ida was a blur. 3.04 seconds. Azuri hopped across. 5.58 seconds. Izuku lined up against Bakugo. Bakugo didn't look at him. He was vibrating with intensity. If I use OFA in my legs, Izuku thought, I'll blow my legs off. I'll cross the finish line maybe, but I'll be a torso sliding on the dirt. I'll die from blood loss in seconds. I'll revive, but the time will be terrible. Start. Bakugo launched himself with explosions. Burst speed. Izuku ran. He ran with just his muscles. He pumped his arms, his sneakers slapping the dirt. 4.13 seconds. The machine called out for Bakugo. Izuku crossed the line, panting. 7.02 seconds. It was a good time for a normal kid. But here? It was pathetic. Bakugo turned back, smoke rising from his hands. Still slow, Deku. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the device. 56 kilograms. Beside him, Shoji gripped his. 540 kilograms. Whoa! Everyone gasped. Izuku stared at the number. He was falling behind. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama used his naval laser to propel himself. Bakugo flew. Izuku jumped. He landed in the sand pit like a normal kid. Test 4, side steps. Minato was a blur, bouncing off his balls. Izuku was average. By the time they reached the 5th event, the ball throw, Izuku was vibrating with anxiety. He was undoubtedly in last place. I have to do something, he thought. I have to use one for all. But the cost. He looked at the ball in his hand. If I focus the power, maybe I can control it? Just a little bit. Midoriya, Aizawa called. You're up. Izuku walked into the circle. The white chalk line felt like the edge of a precipice. Midoriya isn't doing so hot, Kaminari whispered to Kirishima. Well, duh, Siro added. He's the zombie guy, right? Unless he kills himself to launch the ball, what can he do? Wait, does he really have to die to use his quirk? That's what the rumor says. He jumps off buildings and stuff. Izuku heard them. He ignored them. He focused on the ball. I can't get expelled. I have to be a hero. I promised All Might. He remembered the image of All Might deflating. The hero was running out of time. He needed a successor. I can't waste the power he gave me. Even if it hurts. Even if I die. Izuku took a deep breath. He wound up his arm, one for all. 100%. The red veins of energy flared across his arm. The power surged. He felt the familiar, terrifying pressure building in his bones. Smash! He threw the ball. The ball flew, about 46 meters. Huh! Izuku blinked. His arm didn't hurt. It wasn't broken. But the ball hadn't gone anywhere. He looked at his hand. The power had vanished right at the moment of release. I erased your quirk. Izuku turned. Aizawa was standing there. His hair was floating, defying gravity. His scarf was floating. And his eyes, they were glowing red. That entrance exam, Aizawa said, walking closer. His voice was low, dangerous. It wasn't rational. You shattered your arm and legs. You stopped your own heart. You traumatized the other examinees. Aizawa stopped just outside the circle. And now, you were about to do it again. Sensei, you can't control it, can you? Aizawa asked. Your borrowed strength. Izuku froze. He knows. No, Aizawa continued. I don't mean the strength. I mean your life. Aizawa's eyes bored into Izuku's soul. I read your file. Phoenix. You can't die. You come back. And because of that, you treat your body like a disposable lighter. You use it until it's empty, flick it away, and grab a new one. That's not. Do you know what happens to heroes like that? Aizawa cut him off. They don't save people. They traumatize the people they're trying to save. Imagine a hostage situation. You rush in. You get shot in the head. You die in front of the hostage. For 2 minutes you are a corpse on the floor. The villain panics. The hostage screams. Maybe the villain kills the hostage because the hero is dead. Aizawa stepped into the circle, invading Izuku's space. Or maybe you revive. You stand up, covered in blood, bones snapping back into place. Do you think the civilians will feel safe? Or will they be terrified of the monster who won't stay down? I just want to save them. Izuku shouted, clutching the ball. If I have to break to do it, I don't care. I'm the only one who can afford to break. That is exactly the problem, Aizawa hissed. You think you have infinite currency to spend. But pain is real. Psychological damage is real. And relying on a quirk that requires you to fail, to die, in order to succeed? That is zero potential. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell. I returned your quirk. You have 2 throws left. Hurry up and get it over with. He turned and walked back to the sidelines. He has no chance, Aizawa muttered to himself. If he breaks his arm now, he'll be in shock. He'll pass out or die from the trauma again. Either way, he's done. Izuku stood in the circle. His heart was racing. He's right, Izuku thought. He's right. I am scary. I am reckless. He looked at the class. Uraraka looked worried. Ida looked stern. Bakugo looked expectant. But I can't give up. I can't go home. If I use 100%, I break my arm. If I break my arm, I can't do the other tests. If I die, I lose time. I need to focus. Izuku closed his eyes. He thought about the egg in the microwave. He thought about the feeling of the truck on the beach. Not 100%. Not everywhere. He gripped the ball. He moved into the throwing stance. Just the finger. He channeled the power. He felt the ocean of energy rushing toward his hand. He held it back. He bottled it up. And at the very last second, he let a drop of it flow into his index finger. Smash! The air cracked. The ball shot out of his hand like a cannonball, breaking the sound barrier with a sharp boom. At the same instant, Izuku's right index finger exploded. It didn't just break. The skin split, the bones shattered into powder, and blood misted the air. Gah! Izuku hunched over, clutching his hand. The pain was blinding. It was searing, white-hot agony. But he didn't die. He stood there, panting, sweat pouring down his face. His finger was a twisted, purple ruin. Sensei. Izuku wheezed. Aizawa looked at the device. 705.3 meters. He beat Bakugo by 0.1 meters. Aizawa looked up, expecting to see the boy on the ground. Expecting to see the familiar steam of regeneration. But Izuku wasn't regenerating. Not yet. Izuku gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand upright. He turned to Aizawa. His face was pale, his eyes wide with pain, but burning with defiance. I'm still moving, Sensei. He held up his fist. The broken finger throbbed. I didn't die. And I didn't break everything. Just one finger. Aizawa's eyes widened slightly. He minimized the damage? He accepted the pain without relying on the reset? Then, the steam came. It started at the fingertip. A soft hiss. The purple bruising began to lighten. The bone audibly clicked. Snap. Izuku winced as the finger set itself. It wasn't the full-body light show of a revival. It was a localized, slower healing. Because he hadn't died, the phoenix wasn't triggered fully. This was just residual accelerated healing from his high metabolism and the quirk trying to keep him functional. Within 10 seconds, the finger was whole again. Izuku flexed it. It was stiff, but it worked. See? Izuku said, his voice trembling. I can learn. Aizawa stared at him. A slow, creepy smile spread across his face. Ho! What the hell is that? Katsuki Bakugo launched himself forward. DKU! You bastard! Tell me what's going on. He was fast. Explosions popped in his palms as he sprinted toward the circle. He was going to kill him. He was going to blow him up until he stayed dead. Wait, Kaken! Izuku flinched, raising his arms. Suddenly, the scarf wrapped around Bakugo. It was like living steel wire. It bound his arms, his chest, his mouth. GHH? Bakugo struggled. Don't make me use my quirk over and over, Aizawa sighed, the scarf taut in his hands. I have dry eye. It's a waste of time, Aizawa said, releasing Bakugo. We're moving on to the next test. Bakugo glared at Izuku, rubbing his wrist. We're not done, Deku. Izuku rubbed his healed finger. I know. The rest of the tests. Izuku struggled. In the sit-ups, he pushed himself so hard he tore his abdominal muscles. He felt them snap. He paused, gasping, waiting for the steam to knit them back together, then continued. In the distance run, he ran until his lungs bled. He coughed up blood, wiped it away, and kept running. The class watched in a mixture of awe and horror. He's really pushing it, Kirishima whispered. It's like he doesn't feel pain. No, Tsuyuazui said, her finger on her chin. Look at his face. He feels it. He just doesn't stop. By the end of the day, Izuku was exhausted. Not physically. His body had reset completely at least twice during the rigorous exercise, meaning his stamina had been artificially topped up, but mentally, he was drained. The sun was setting. Long shadows stretched across the field. All right, Aizawa said, gathering the class. Time for the results. He projected a hologram from his phone. The total is simply the marks you got from each test. It's a waste of time to explain verbally, so just look. Izuku closed his eyes. I gave it everything. But my base stats are low. And I only used OFA for the ball throw. He opened his eyes. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 20. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku felt the ground drop out from under him. Last place. I'm expelled, he whispered. The air was silent. Even Bakugo was quiet, staring at the board. Aizawa clicked his phone off. The hologram vanished. By the way, the expulsion was a lie. Ha! It was a logical ruse to draw out the upper limits of your quirks. Wait, a what? The class screamed. Of course it was a lie, Yaoyorozu sighed, hand on her chest. It was obvious if you thought about it. I didn't notice at all. Shiro, Kirishima, and Kaminari yelled in unison. Izuku stood there, his knees shaking. He wasn't expelled. He was safe. That was a little nerve-wracking, huh? Shiro laughed, slapping Izuku on the back. Good thing, right, Midoriya? Why, yeah, Izuku squeaked. Midoriya, Aizawa said. The class quieted down. Aizawa was walking away, but he stopped. He turned his head slightly. Go to the nurse's office. Have recovery girl check that finger. Even if it looks healed, structural integrity might be compromised. Yes, sir. Aizawa walked away. As he turned the corner of the building, he saw a skeletal figure lurking in the shadows. All might, Aizawa said, not breaking stride. So you were watching. Aizawa-kun, All Might stepped out. That was cruel. A logical ruse? You expelled an entire class last year. You don't bluff. You're right, Aizawa stopped. I don't bluff. I fully intended to send him home. Then why didn't you? Aizawa looked at the sky. That kid. Midoriya. He's unbalanced. He views his life as a currency to be spent. He has a martyr complex the size of this school. I know, All Might said softly. I'm trying to teach him. If I expelled him, Aizawa said, what would he do? With a quirk like that? And a heart like that? Aizawa turned to face All Might. He'd become a vigilante. He'd go out on the streets, untrained, unlicensed, and he'd throw himself at villains until one of them found a way to kill him permanently. Or trap him in a fate worse than death. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He is a danger to himself. The only place he can be monitored, controlled, and hopefully fixed, is here. I see, All Might smiled. You're soft, Aizawa. I'm logical, Aizawa snapped, walking away. His potential is non-zero. That's all. The walk home. Izuku walked out of the school gates as the sun dipped below the horizon. His finger felt fine. His body felt fine. Deku! Izuku froze. He turned around. Ochako Uraraka was running toward him, Ida trailing behind. Hey! Wait up! She panted. You're Midoriya, right? Deku? Actually, Deku is what Kaken calls me to make fun of me. Really? But Deku sounds like Dikaira. Like you can do it. I'm Deku. Izuku blurted out instantly. Midoriya-kun, Ida adjusted his glasses. Your performance today was alarming. But impressive. You truly embody the spirit of self-sacrifice. Thanks? Izuku scratched his head. But Uraraka said, her smile fading slightly. It was scary too. When your finger exploded, and then when it fixed itself. She looked at his hand. Does it hurt? She asked softly. When you regenerate? Izuku looked at his hand. He remembered the crunch. He remembered the heat. Yeah, he said quietly. It hurts a lot. Then why do you do it? Izuku looked at the gates of UA High. He thought about Aizawa's words. Zero potential. Because, Izuku said, clenching his fist. Pain is temporary. But if I don't act, the regret lasts forever. He looked at them and smiled. It was a weak, tired smile, but it was genuine. Come on. Let's go to the station. As they walked away, laughing and talking, Izuku felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't pain. It wasn't the feeling of dying. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was living. But in the shadows of the alleyway they passed, a figure watched. A man with hands covering his face scratched his neck violently. He regenerates. Shigaraki Tamura rasped, looking at a photo of the green-haired boy on his phone. Teacher was right. He's the perfect counter to the symbol of peace. Or maybe, the perfect toy for my Noma. The darkness was gathering. And for the boy who breaks and mends, the real trials were only just beginning.